In this video, I'm going to start working on the background vocals. Now, you might want to work on the drums at this point, but I really want to make sure that I focus on the vocals, and the background vocals are an important part of the hook of this song. Now, they're recorded in a very loose fashion, and I think that the intention is to get that kind of a loose, gritty feel. What I'm going to do is tighten these vocals up a little bit with Audio Snap. We're not going to quantize them. We're going to manually tighten them up. We're just going to get them tighter so that it really drives home the hook. So first I'll play it back, and then I'll show you how I approach something like this.
He'll never take me down, down to the darkness, down with the devil.
So that's the intro hook, and this comes back a few times in the songs. You can hear that some of the vocals a little early and some are a little late, delivered quite a bit differently. So I'm just going to start attacking these. I'm going to grab the first vocal, and we'll go through and turn on Audio Snap. Now, the way Audio Snap works is we can turn it on with the edit filter by turning it from clips to audio transients mode. When you go to audio transients, it starts detecting the transients. But before we do that, we want to check some of the settings. We can either do that here in the clip properties, because it's a clip based. Under Audio Snap section here, we can enable Audio Snap. Select this clip. We can enable Audio Snap here. But there's more options in the Audio Snap panel. We can easily get to that by hitting A on the keyboard. That brings it up. And this enables or disables Audio Snap right here. Now, the important property right here is the threshold. If you turn the threshold up and down, you can see we get more or less transients detected in the part. Not really going to quantize it. I want some of these transients here. Any ones that I don't get, I'll place manually. We can also set the resolution. If we put it on all, we'll definitely get more transients detected. And sometimes those will be erroneous. We'll be turning those on and off. So I'll just leave this set somewhere around here. I'll leave the resolution to all right now. Now, an important thing to take a look at here is the render mode. So if we have online rendering, we would typically set this to groove clip unless it's a drum part. So I'll make sure that's set that way. And then for offline, we want to make sure this is set to vocal for these parts. So we're using the isotope radius solo mode, which is for vocals. As we're working on it and we start to stretch the audio, it might sound a little rough, but don't worry about that, because when you bounce the clip, freeze the track, or when you do your final mix down, it will actually sound quite smooth because it will use the high quality mode. So with that set that way, let's start making some adjustments to this. I'm going to solo this track. There's all kinds of features to allow you to quantize to this and that. I typically prefer to do this by eye against the drum part. So I'm going to grab one of the overhead mics so that I can see the transients. Maybe doesn't matter if it's the right or the left. That way I get the kick and the snare. I can basically see where anything hits on a 16th note. The problem with quantizing to the grid, if say you have a little bit of swing in the song where the 8th notes are slightly delayed and you start to quantize, it actually really messes up the feel of the song. The easiest way I found is to do this manually against something that's providing the groove for the song. So I'm going to grab this and just put this up here near what I'm working on. And then with this solo, I'll start playing back and we'll do the adjustments.
He'll never.
All right, so here's the word never. I'm going to disable some of these transients. Actually, I think what I'm going to do is go back to the panel and reduce this so that I get less transients to work with. So this is the one that I want. You can see this is a little bit early. Now, in order to adjust this, the never, I'm going to move it back just a little bit in line with this beat. And that's basically how that's done. You can see that this looks pretty good here. This, I'm not sure about. Okay, that might be a little early depending on exactly how you time this. So I'll just move that slightly later. I really don't want stuff to be early. That really doesn't sound good typically with vocals if things are early.
Take me down, down.
All right, here we'll turn this transient back on, basically by not disabling it. It looks like it's lined up pretty good, but having it in there will help lock this in as we move through the part. This looks a little bit late, but I don't know if I mind that.
Down to the darkness, down with.
Okay, this one we will turn back on.
With the devil. He'll never take me down, down to the darkness, down with the devil.
Now I can navigate by markers. If I hold Control, Shift, and Page up, then I can easily get back to the beginning of the intro.
He'll never.
Now, if you hear that audio degradation there, that's because we're in the preview mode. So that kind of flanging sound, that will clear up after we bounce this clip. So with that set that way, I'm going to move on to the remaining parts. So I'm going to set them all up together. So I'll drag across the track numbers to select the remaining background vocals. And I'm going to turn on the audio transient detection on all of them together by holding Shift Control while flipping this to audio transients. You'll see that it comes up on all of them. If I hit A, I could adjust the threshold, but I think I'll leave it somewhere around here. And then I'm going to proceed to make the adjustments on the next track here. And again, I'm going to promote it to get it up near the drums.
He'll never take me down. Down.
So these transients that are in the middle of a very long held out part, we really don't want those. So I'll just drag around these and then I'll right click on one of them and disable those. If it's bending around the middle of a held note, it usually sounds pretty rough. Zoom out slightly.
Down, down to.
Like this one here as well, we'll disable.
Down.
It's a little late, but I don't know if I really mind that. This one here, we'll just tighten that up a little bit. Disable this marker. Tighten this one up.
Down to the
That's quite late, so we'll bring that back.
darkness.
This one, I'll just try disabling that one.
Yes.
And again, these were in the middle of a held out section, so I'll right click and disable those. Align these a little bit better.
Down with the devil. Devil.
All right, so we've got these two parts. Timing's been adjusted. I'll pan them left and right again. I'll use the Shift Control Page up to get back to the beginning, and we'll audition this.
He'll never take me down, down to the darkness, down with the devil.
All right, so that's a little bit tighter. These are also soloed, so let's listen to that with the rest of the stuff.
He'll never take me down, down to the darkness, down with the
All right, so I'm going to go back and start working on the female vocal background vocals. We already have the audio transients turned on for these parts. I will solo them, and I think I can go through and kind of adjust these together. All right, the never is a little bit late, so we'll tighten that up. You can also see from the previous one where I put that transient. So we can kind of use that as a little bit of a guide with these. And of course, we're going to do this by ear as well, but sometimes you can just get the beginning part of it in here and then make an adjustment. Now, obviously, this is a kind of a growl into the note. So the transient's not really in the right place back here. We can move the transient by grabbing it in the middle and moving it where you want before you do the bend. So I get these lined up, and these I can just disable because I don't really need to adjust the starting point for that growl. And I can disable this here. Now this takes a little bit of manual work to work through it, but the results are going to be a lot better and a lot more natural than if we did some sort of a quantizing function.
He'll never take me. Take me down.
And I think it works a lot better to line these transients up with the drum part than it does to line them up to the grid. Again, we don't want any of these through the held out parts. We can just draw a selection around them and then just right click and disable those. So I'm going to continue working through this and the remaining phrases of the song using this technique.
He'll never take me down, down to the darkness, down with the devil.
All right, so that's a lot tighter, but the cutoff is really ragged where the low part extends out a lot longer. Now, if you like that, you would leave that in there, but I'm going to zoom in a little bit here and add my own warp marker so that I can take that out on the ending here. So we'll add an extra marker here. Alt. And I'll line it up to get the length to match with this one. Looks like that shifted this a little bit.
The devil. Down with the devil. Down with the devil.
All right, well, there's a couple things I'd like to point out. As you're working on different sections of this song, I'm working on this section right here.
Ground and I'll take you down.
It's a good idea to place manual transient markers on each side of it so that you don't affect the material before or after. You can kind of mess up the timing of the song as you work through it if you don't do this. So as you move on to a new section, it can easily do that by holding down Alt and clicking on these tracks, and you can just add those in. To take out multiples of these, you could just drag around them. If you've manually put them in, you can actually delete those markers like that. The other thing I want to point out is one of the things I'm really listening for is the vowel sounds, like in this particular phrase, take you down. The T's will sound a lot better and a lot tighter if you align those. If they're really ragged, then that really sticks out in the mix. You can hear the multiple T's in the background vocals. One of the ways to do that is to make sure your transient is actually on the T. So I've moved the transient markers here. And the way you can figure that out, I'm going to use my fast zoom. So if I zoom way in, the T sound actually occurs back here on the waveform, but the transient sometimes gets detected at the front edge of the word like this, like the word take. There's sort of like take. One of the ways you can figure that out is by continually placing the cursor on one of these and playing back and seeing when you lose the T. So I'm going to zoom out just slightly here and demonstrate that. So if we play it from here, if we play it here, you can hear the T. But if you play it here, T's gone. So then you can see that the actual transient falls right in here, and it's the same on all of these waves. That makes it really easy to line these up. So then you just basically adjust this until you're in the right area to pick up the meaningful part of the consonant. You'll see the same sort of thing on D's. There's a lot of D's in here, like down. All right, well, I've been working my way through the project. I'm on this phrase here right now.
On the ground for another round.
Now, another helpful keyboard shortcut is if you hit N, it recenters the screen around the cursor. And so I want to put some manual markers here. So as I adjust this, I don't affect the section that follows it. So I'll just hold down Alt, put these in here. And I'll just these slightly to the beat. Now this is all in held out areas, so we can just do a selection around these, right click, disable those markers. This is just perfectly fine, but we'll move that detection back a little bit and just drag these to where they're a little bit after the beat as it's lined up with the overhead mic. And we can listen to this. Okay, these markers we don't need, because they're in the middle of a held out phrase. They'll just lead to some pretty nasty artifacts. We can make just a couple of more adjustments here, just to get that a little bit tighter. Disable that. I can use my fast zoom to zoom out, look at the whole section. This is typically what our harmony vocal sections look like. I really try to disable any of the transient detection markers that I don't need. The ground for another round. You hear a lot of that pop and crackling sound. That's just sort of the artifacts of the preview mode of Audio Snap. So if you've heard that before and decided that you can't use Audio Snap, you have to live with that a little bit while you're editing, but when we bounce it down, it'll sound nice and clear. All right, and we're on the final section of the song. Sounds like this.
He'll never take me down.
All right, so I'm going to just put in the markers here. It doesn't matter on the ending because there's nothing that follows it. And then we also can tell right here is down. Everything after that will not require any bending. So I disable all those markers there. And then we'll go through and just clean up just a little bit of adjustment here on these parts. There's where our actual beat is. Those are a little late. I don't want to totally correct that, so we'll go ahead and leave them just a little bit late. So never, this is the second word, so anything in here is not a note, so I'll disable these. Got that one by mistake. Actually spend probably more time disabling markers than I do using the markers. So here's another example of take. So I'm going to move the transient detection markers back here on all of these words, so I can disable this one. You can say they all have a very similar shape. And then zoom out slightly. If I click up here, you can see this is my actual beat. So I'm going to just move these just slightly back to align with that. Pretty sure. There, and all our takes are lined up. Now I can select all these markers and disable them. So that word is me. We'll enable this marker. I'll just let these go free. This ending part of the hook, I definitely want this nice and tight. Okay, here's our down. So I'll turn this marker, I'll turn this one back on, move it up here, find our downbeat. All right, now I've gone through and I've finished manually adjusting the timing of all these tracks. So phrase by phrase, I've taken a look at everything. I've made sure not to put in too many markers to bend the audio where it shouldn't be bent. And the other thing is there's a little bit of a additional vocal, background vocal here using the lead vocalist that I don't want to touch at this point. So what I'm going to do is go back to the clip mode here and separate that out. So I'll just hold down Alt over here and just split that so that that's not part of what we're going to deal with. I guess while I'm at it, I can roll this back a little bit. Now, for all of these clips, however, I want to bounce them down. So I think what I'll do is go back into the clip mode. So I'll hold down Shift and Control and switch them all back to the clip mode. And then I'm going to bounce all these clips. So I'll just select them all. I'll right click and select Bounce to Clips. Now this will use the high quality algorithm to adjust all the audio snap adjustments that I've made and make it sound nice and smooth. This might take as long as several minutes, but you can see that it's processing the audio right here. Now the bounce is complete. Let's audition some of these parts just to hear the difference in the sound.
He'll never take me down, down to the darkness, down with the devil.
That sounds good.
Rather try to take me down.
All right, sounds great. So that completes the process of tightening up the background vocals using Audio Snap. Bouncing down the parts is essential to get the high quality algorithm from Audio Snap. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.